Okay, so it's 6:02 guys. We can start quickly without any further delay. Cool. So good evening. Welcome back. Welcome back to your own channel, Scholars. I'm very glad we're back to discuss chapter 7, which is an imperial capital, Vijayanagara. So we've already done part 1 on this on Wednesday. So here we are to do part 2. I'll be basically covering sub-theme 3 and sub-theme 4 today, right? So, okay, a couple of you are already here. Naveen is here with us. Hi Naveen, good evening. Okay, I'm hoping others will quickly join in the next 2-3 minutes. In the meanwhile, we can do the introductory part. Aditi is back. Hi Aditi, good evening. Okay, just give me like 2-3 minutes. I'll wrap the introductory part and then we can dive straight into the topic. As most of you all know, my name is Nikitha and I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel. I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th, and as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have graduated from Ashoka University with a bachelor's degree. I have a major in history and a minor in political science. So talking a little bit about Unacademy's Plus features, you can actually learn live from the comfort of your own houses, and these courses are taught by top educators of India. There are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests, and also a live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, mentorship is provided, guidance is provided, along with access to various study materials as well. So when it comes to Unacademy's Plus's pricing, we actually have 6 ranges of subscription starting from 6 months to 24 months. So these are the actual prices, but if you use the code which is TUM10, you'll be basically given a 10% off on the subscription, and these are the post discounted prices. Moving on to Iconic, we have even better features here. We have personal mentorship, like a one-on-one thing with your mentor. Then there are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. When it comes to Iconic, we have 9 different subscriptions starting from 3 months to 48. The same thing goes here. The prices on the left are the actual prices after the code 10% discount, and these are the post discounted prices. And lastly, there's something called as Emerge. It's basically a test conducted by Unacademy, and the test format is as such that it's aligned with the latest CBSE guidelines. So it basically helps you in preparing for your term 1 boards. I highly recommend you all to go enroll yourselves for the test and take part in that. The link for that is in the description below of this video, so please go check that out. And yeah, so that's the little bit we had. We can quickly move on to the topic. Okay, a few of you all just joined, so good evening everyone who just joined. I am doing amazingly well, Naveen. Thanks for asking. How are you? Shoaib is also here. Hi, Shoaib. Yes, I'm well, Shoaib. How are you? Okay, I think we can start. Most of you are already here. Cool. Yes, so we've done part 1 and we discussed, I think, 2 sub-themes in the last class. We were about to discuss the Amar and Ayaka system, but we ran out of time, so we'll start off today's session with Amar and Ayaka system, right? So the topic, or like the subtitle for that, is the Rayas and Nayakas. Like, who are these people? Who are Rayas? Who are Nayakas? In the empire, like, conventional notion is that only king is supposed to hold all the power. Like, king is the most powerful of everybody. But when it comes to Vijayanagara Empire, it is not a centralized form of power that we see. In fact, we see some sort of decentralization of power, which means it's not just the king, but also some certain other people also have power in their hands. That is nothing but decentralization of power, right? So who are these people? These people are actually military chiefs, or you can call them as military commanders, right? Their main duty is obviously to maintain an army, like look after all the expenditure of the army, the training for the soldiers, their salaries, like everything related to military wing. That's their duty. And another duty also they had is to control the forts, like manage the forts, right? So these people actually had a lot of power because they had an army behind them. And in most of the cases, the army is going to listen to the military commander only, but not the king, right? So that's why military chiefs are powerful. Ansh is here with us. Hi, Ansh. Okay, so moving on to the next point. So what did these military commanders or military chiefs do? They were given transfers very frequently, which means that they had to move from one place to another, right? But along with that, what also used to happen is a lot of normal, like ordinary people, especially like peasant groups, also moved along with the military chief wherever he's going, right? Why is that so? Why are peasants moving along with chiefs? Because peasants' lives are dependent on the military chiefs, because military chiefs are the people who pay these peasants, like who sort of give some sort of livelihood to the peasants, right? So that is why wherever the chiefs are going, the peasants also usually follow them, and there they look for a plot of land and then they settle and cultivate their crops. That's another story. Yeah. So these chiefs are basically called as nayakas, right? This is very important. If the question is who are nayakas, these military chiefs are basically referred to as nayakas. And since the languages spoken in the region were mainly Kannada and Telugu, these nayakas also spoke Kannada and Telugu mostly, right? Ansh has a question. Yes, Ansh, you can definitely ask. Post your question on the chat box. Yeah, exactly, Aditi. Exactly, like you don't need to ask permission, Ansh, every time. Just post it on the chat box. I'll have a look at it and answer. Yeah. Okay. Vidit is here. Hi, Vidit. Okay, just type down your question, Ansh. Meanwhile, I'll finish the last point of the slide also. So most of these nayakas, who were basically military commanders, obviously they had to pay some sort of, like they had to show some sort of loyalty to the king, because king is the actual person who gave these people the power in the first place, right? So it is necessary, or it is like ethically correct or morally correct, that nayakas have to submit to the authority of the king or pay some sort of tribute, be loyal, be obedient and all that stuff. And in fact they did most of the times. But there are some situations where nayakas were so rebellious, they were very greedy for power, and then they misused their power and therefore revolted against the king himself, right? But somehow king, with the help of other nayakas or other rulers, somehow they try to subdue these military actions, subdue these revolts, right? So whatever the situation is, mostly king was able to suppress these, but by the end of 17th century, king was not in a power to suppress these military revolts, and that is why the empire collapsed. That is the decline of the Vijayanagara story, which will look towards the end, right? But just remember for now that military chiefs are very important and they play a very crucial role in the administration of the empire, right? Okay. Okay, Ansh has a question. Thinkers believes in building solid chapter के materialist and fatalist made difference. बता दीजिए दीदी. Okay, so guys, just hold on for a second with the Vijayanagara chapter. Let's just like quickly go back to chapter 4 and quickly talk about the difference between materialist people and fatalist people, right? So one difference, Ansh, like the major difference is when it comes to fatalists, they actually believe that everything is predetermined for them, right? I'll say, for example, they believe in the concept of fate, right? Or they believe that even before they are born, God has written everything down. Yeah, like how their lives will be going, what will they become in the future, when will they die, how will they live, everything in their life is already predetermined. Even if you want to change those things, you can't, because it's already determined before in hand, right? So these are the people who basically believe that we as individuals don't have any agency in writing our own fate, but somebody else has already written our fate, which is basically God in most cases, right? So that's fatalist, like believing in the fate is fatalists. On the other hand, we have a totally extreme group of people, like polar opposites, who believe in materialist things, right? They want like everything material in their life, like everything which is physical or everything which is not abstract, right? It can be as simple as things like money, gold, like any material thing, right? Any wealthy thing. These materialists actually give a lot of importance to these material things, and they also believe that they have the agency in their lives to control how the life is going. Yeah, whether they can earn more, basically not letting go of their lives. They are taking control of their own lives, right? So this is the basic difference. Again, we have different names as to who was the founder of these fatalists and materialists. Were there any followers for them? Like different other data is also there in your textbook. But the basic definition of these two is this, Ansh. I hope that's clear. If not, in the next class probably we can look at it in detail. Just let me know, Ansh, in the chat box if that's clear. Okay, I'll move on to the next slide then. So we'll start talking about the Amara Nayaka system, right? Like we've seen Nayakas, we've just studied who Nayakas are, but what is this new thing called Amara Nayaka system? Honestly speaking, this Amara Nayaka system is a very novel feature of Vijayanagara Empire. Like no other empire before Vijayanagara has actually followed this. It is an invention of Vijayanagara Empire, right? So it is somewhat similar to what Delhi Sultanate people did in the form of Ikta systems, right? So again, I'm not saying Ikta and Amaranayaka are similar. They're not the same. But some features of our Amaranayaka system are derived from the Ikta system of Delhi Sultanate people. But like what is this Amaranayaka system, right? So as the name suggests, Amaranayakas are also military commanders only. Yeah, but why Amara? Like what are the features that are differing? So these kings, they usually allot a certain piece of land, right, to the military commander who is the Nayaka. Also, just to give you information, Raya is basically the king. So whenever I'm using the word Raya, I'm referring to the king. So when king used to give this piece of land to the military commander, he has every right over that land, be it collecting taxes, be it exercising his judicial powers, his military powers, like anything. Total control over the land. He's basically the mini king of that region, if I can say so. Yeah. So in that scenario, he'll collect taxes at the end of the year or at the end of the month, whatever the situation is. He will keep a certain portion of that tax collected with himself. Let's say he collected 1,000 rupees, right? For example, there will be a certain amount that is fixed between the king and the Nayaka, that Nayaka can take this much share, let's say like 500 rupees, like half of the share. He'll keep that 500 with himself, and remaining 500 he'll give it back to the king, right? So whatever is going to the king is going to the treasury, like treasure boxes and stuff. But what is he doing with this 500 rupees? Number one, that is his own salary, because he worked, he maintained armies, he collected taxes, so some of it is his salary. Some of it, again, he has to spend in order to carry out certain welfare activities. For example, maintaining the horses, right? Maintaining the soldiers. Soldiers need to be paid salaries, horses need food to eat, they need a shelter to live. All of these are taken care by the Nayaka itself, right? So within that 500 only, he needs to again invest in something else, right? So now you understand how this system works. Tax collection, keeping some with the Nayaka himself, paying the remaining amount to the king, and living with his own 500. Again, this is a very simplified version of what an Amaranayaka system is, but the basic feature is that. Anybody has any doubts regarding Amaranayaka system, please let me know. Type in the chat box saying once again or something, I will explain it once again. Okay, I hope that's clear. Okay, it's clear. Thanks, Shoaib, for responding. Cool. So, I think I've covered the whole points here. They retain part of the revenue. These contingents, yeah. So, I've been mentioning that these Amaranayakas actually maintain a certain set of horses and soldiers, right? So these are the actual people who helped during the times of war. Because in most of the scenarios, Vijayanagara ruler did not have a standing army of his own. He hardly did. Even if he did, he hardly had like 100 soldiers or 200 soldiers, which is definitely not sufficient for a war. We need thousands and thousands of soldiers for a war, right? So in cases of war and battles, kings actually used to rely on the Nayakas to supply their horses and soldiers. So that's the importance of Amaranayakas. Because they have so many soldiers and horses, that is why they also have so much power, right? So yeah, that's Amaranayaka. Again, the same thing is being reiterated here, that with the same 500 rupees that he gets as the salary, he maintains soldiers, he maintains horses. At the same time, he also invests it in some sort of welfare activities, for example, construction of temples, or like repairing of temples, or paving the irrigation networks. Because honestly speaking, the Vijayanagara Empire was a very arid region, like a desert type of region. It did not receive much rainfall, and therefore irrigation network was very, very necessary for agriculture, right? So in such cases, money was actually invested to build irrigation networks. Yeah, and Amaranayakas also had to appear in front of the king annually, like once in a year, to show their loyalty. Because what if they become greedy for power and are planning to revolt against the king or something? King also has to make sure that he is safe. Nobody is going to like internally revolt against him. He needs that assurance, he needs that safety. That is why he demands the Amaranayakas to actually come to his royal court and give him so many gifts to show their loyalty to them, right? All of these sort of things was done to make sure that king is safe. Yeah, and also these Amaranayakas, as I was telling you, they were constantly transferred from one place to another. Why? There has to be a logical explanation behind it, right? Otherwise, why will people move every year from one place to another? It's difficult, because it's not just the Amaranayaka who is going, but his families, his kin, so many peasants are accompanying him. The reason being, if Amaranayaka actually stays at a single place for a longer duration, let's say he's staying for 5 years without any transfers, in that case, he'll actually become more close with the local community. Yeah, he'll have so many good ties, friendly ties with the local community, and then probably they might unite together and revolt against the king, which is a bad thing for the king. So in order to make sure no internal revolts are happening, king used to quickly transfer. If transfers are happening, there's not much time that the Amaranayaka has to make these relations with local people. He can't gain the support of the people, right? So that is the logic behind. And yeah, but mostly this was effective till 17th century. But in the 17th century, most of the rulers that were coming from Aravidu dynasty were not that powerful. They were not efficient administrators. They didn't follow this transfer system well, gave too much power to Amaranayakas, and obviously Amaranayakas will take advantage of the situation. And they did. They established their own independent kingdoms, revolted against the king, and finally one day the empire totally collapsed because of this. Yeah, so that's how the empire came to an end. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of Amaranayaka's topic. Any questions still here, guys? That's the end of one subtopic. Any questions, let me know, otherwise I can start the next one. We can discuss about how the Vijayanagara city or the capital itself has been built. Okay, I think I'll continue. Cool. So the next topic we'll be talking about is Vijayanagara, the capital or the city itself, and its environs, like what's surrounding it, environment basically. Like most other capitals, Vijayanagara city also had a very different or a distinctive architectural style, let's say. Yeah, in terms of constructing its houses, in terms of constructing its temples, huge structures, monuments, the construction of roads, bridges, right? It has a certain unique style, just like every other city has. We will look about that, like how the city is organized, what is the rough layout of the city and stuff. But before actually talking about the structure itself, let's just for a minute see who actually wrote about Vijayanagara, so that we have so many sources right now. Like what are basically these archaeological and also literary sources that are available to us? How did we reconstruct Vijayanagara history? Right? So we do have a number of sources, starting with archaeological sources. We have so many inscriptions available because most of the Vijayanagara kings themselves, and also Nayakas for that matter, used to issue a number of inscriptions whenever they're doing like donations. All of those donations and transactions were actually recorded as a manuscript. So those manuscripts are also available. Inscriptions are there. Like detailed information is there on them. So by looking at that, we can reconstruct history. And not just these archaeological remains, we also have certain textual sources available, right? Mostly they're not, I mean, a few of them are Indian authors, but mostly they are from foreign accounts, foreign travelers. So we were basically talking about 14th to 16th century, right? 14th to 16th century is a time when already Western people started visiting us for trade, for settling, whatever it is. There's so much of international, like international people coming. We are also going to different places, like in the world. All of that exchange is happening. So in that scenario, many authors, I'll say, they also visited India, especially Vijayanagara Empire. And when they are here, they actually wrote about it. Like what's happening, daily life, how was the administration, how was the economy, religions, everything. So those accounts are pretty much available to us. And Within the accounts that are available also, we have certain special ones. For example, an account written by Italian trader named Niccolo de Conti. Right? He wrote a very important book on Vijayanagara Empire, very, very important for us. And we also have an ambassador named Abdur Razak, very crucial figure. Please remember Abdur Razak's history, even if you don't want to remember others' history, because even in sample papers and stuff, we come across a lot of Abdur Razak questions, right? So he's an important figure. So he's actually not an author per se, but in fact he's an ambassador who has visited the court of Vijayanagara ruler, and he was sent by the ruler of Persia. Persia is present day Iran, right? And then we also have a third figure who is Afasani Nikitin. The spelling is here. He is from Russia. So all of these people actually came in the 15th century, right? In 16th century also we have certain other people, for example Duarte Barbosa, Domingo Pace and Fernão Nunes. But all of these people are from Portugal, because in the 16th century Indian region saw a lot of Portuguese people coming in. So during that situation, Barbosa, Pace and Nunes came in. Right? So through all of these accounts, through all of these people's books, we have a lot of information, and we are therefore trying to reconstruct Vijayanagara history. Right? So now we'll actually look into how the city is constructed, where are its sources coming from, like what is the architecture of the city. Right? At any point of time you'll have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me in the chat box, guys. We can quickly talk about that. Okay, the next one is actually water resources. Most of us know that water is very, very important for anything, for a human life, right? So honestly speaking, even though there was no rainfall as such, because it is an arid region, we did have water coming from other sources. For example, we had a natural basin formed by the river Tungabhadra. Tungabhadra actually flows in present day Karnataka. Vijayanagara was also mostly focused in Karnataka only back in those times. So we have Tungabhadra river. It formed a river basin there, right? From this Tungabhadra river, we have water resources. Like people used to use Tungabhadra water. And another thing is, there were a lot of hills or mountain landscapes surrounding the city of Vijayanagara. So obviously when there are mountains, there is always a possibility that streams will flow from the mountains, right? That's a common phenomena anywhere. So most of the river streams actually used to flow downhill, like from these hills, and provide water to the city. Yeah, that's one. And people actually made wise use of this water, in the sense that whenever this water is being collected downstairs, like in the foothills of the base of the foothills, that they were wise enough to construct some sort of dams or embankments. Embankments is nothing but like a barrier thing to collect water in a particular place, right? So embankments were built, water was collected, and whenever there is a scarcity for water, they used to take water from this dam, right? And as I was also mentioning, that because it's an arid region, it's a very dry region, no sufficient rainfall. Obviously, arrangements had to be done to collect rainwater. In case you run out of actual normal water, you use this rainwater, right? So what are the water resources we are seeing here? We are seeing 4 different things, right? Again, it's very important, guys, to remember what these 4 different resources of water are, like what are the sources for them. The first is Tungabhadra river basin. The second is water flowing downhill from these hills. The third is construction of embankments and creating reservoirs. And the last one is collecting rainwater. So I'm hoping this is clear regarding water resources. Okay. So after analyzing the four different ways of collecting water from different sources, we'll just look at one example of how important the tanks are, or basically collecting river water is. So in order to collect river water, they need some sort of container, right? So in such a scenario, huge tanks were built. Not the tanks we see in our houses, but like very huge, right? So these huge tanks were built in early years of 15th century, and we have one of that which is very important because it's so huge. It's called as Kamalapuram tank, right? Again, an important question for boards. Please make note of this point. Kamalapuram tank. If they ask you when it's built, you'll have to say it's in the 15th century, right? Okay, Nematullah is here. Hi Nematullah, welcome back. Cool. Pinky is also here. Hi Pinky. Okay. So what was the water from this Kamalapuram tank used for? For like what purpose exactly? Water from this tank, it not just irrigated the fields nearby, which is like one of the primary purposes. Obviously, they wanted to irrigate their fields. That's number one. But other than that, they also like constructed certain river channels which ran into the royal center. Again, what is royal center? We will see that there is a demarcation of the city in itself. We have royal center, we have sacred center, we have a place where common people resided. So it's just basically a differentiation of the regions within the city. As the name suggests, royal center is basically where all the palaces are located, kings used to live, king's family used to live, like everything royal and elite. So in order to supply water to that royal center, water used to go from this Kamalapuram tank because there was a river channel connecting these two, right? So that's Kamalapuram tank. Oh, you're Shrestha. Hi Shrestha. Yes, you're absolutely right. Where Rajas lived, right? That is exactly the place where what royal center is for. Yeah. So another important prominent waterworks that we can see, but it's not there now anymore. It is in ruins. It's damaged. That is Hiria Canal. Very important back in those times again, right? So what did this Hiria Canal do? This Hiria Canal drew water from a dam across the Tungabhadra. I was telling you the dams and embankments are constructed. So from one of these dams, again, a channel was laid, right? And whatever fields are near to that dam, all of those cultivated fields were supposed to be irrigated from the water from Hiria Canal, right? So that's what they exactly did. And mostly these agricultural fields that are supposed to be irrigated, they were located between the sacred center and the urban core. Again, urban core is also another differentiation within the city itself. Again, just to like tell you, there are three differentiations. One is sacred center, the urban is royal center, and the third is urban core. We'll look at all three of them in greater detail in the next classes, but for now just remember the three names, right? So yeah, and there was also a common consensus between historians that Hiria Canal was actually built by Sangama dynasty kings. Again, please remember the order of the dynasties, right? First we have Sangama, then we have Salava, then we have Tuluva and Aravidu. So it's very important please to remember the names or the order of these dynasties, right? Okay, Harsh is here. Hi Harsh. Cool. Any questions still here, guys, or should I go ahead? I'm assuming everything's clear. Yes, Reshta, the order you're mentioning is correct. Sangama, Salwa, Tulwa, and finally we also have Aravidu. Okay, we'll talk about the next thing, which is fortifications and roads. Before talking about these three elements in detail, which is the urban core, the sacred center, and the royal center, we'll just look at something which is the fortifications and roads, which actually connected and protected these three places. Roads are basically for connection, and fortifications are basically for protection. Right? So, Abdur Razak, the same person we have seen a couple of slides before, we also have discussed that he is an ambassador sent by the Persian king to the court of Vijayanagara. He was actually sent to Calicut, like he arrived in Calicut. Calicut is present day Kozhikode in Kerala. Right? He came in the 15th century, and as soon as he arrived, he was greatly impressed by the fortifications of the city. Fortifications is nothing but a huge wall running around the borders of the city to protect itself from enemies. Right? So these fortifications are huge. Fortifications were there for any other kingdom also. But why are Vijayanagara fortifications special? Because Vijayanagara didn't just have one line, two line or three lines, but it had 7 different lines of fortifications, which means 7 different huge walls. That's a lot, because I don't think any other empire in the past would have had so many forts. Right? So it had 7, and these encircled not only the city but also its agricultural hinterlands and forests. That is why we have 7. One is encircling the whole city, one is encircling just the agricultural plots, one is encircling the forests, one is for something else. Right? So different things within the city are encircled by different fortifications. The outermost wall linked the hill surrounding the city. Like it just basically went around the city. It's just like the outermost wall. And another feature of this outermost wall, it's very thin. It's slightly tapered. Tapered is nothing but narrow. Right? These walls are much narrower than the huge like vidhi walls we see nowadays. Yeah. Another important thing when it comes to fortifications is no mortar or cementing agent was employed anywhere in the construction. Surprising, right? Because I don't think in the present times any of us would imagine a construction, a building, or let's say a wall without the usage of cement. Then how did it stand properly? Like, wall would easily fall away if there's no cement. But how did it stand for so many years? There's a technique, and this technique is important. It's in fact mind-blowing, right? It's very creative. I'll just like roughly in a minute explain what that technique is. So it all has to do with the shape of the bricks or shape of the blocks. Right? These are usually stone blocks, and they are mostly wedge shaped. Again, what is a wedge shape? The normal footwear wedges we have, like girls use. Which shape are they in? Something like this, right? Just considering the heel. Yeah. So wedges are usually in the shape of a right angle triangle, let's imagine. Yeah. There were so many other blocks like this only. Right? So while you're trying to build a wall, one brick is placed like this and the other brick is also in the same shape, right? So it was actually placed like this. So that becomes a square or rectangle now. Yeah. I'm hoping the point is clear. I know my drawings are pretty bad, but like just try to like imagine in your head something is in the form of a right angle triangle and then you're trying to fix a reversed right angle triangle on top. it becomes a square or a rectangle, and it fits perfectly, right? That is exactly how the walls back in those times were constructed, because of the shape of the bricks, without the usage of cement. Yeah, so that's that. Any clarification regarding this technique, please let me know. Okay, square or rectangular bastions projected outwards. Again, what are bastions? Let's say this is a wall, and in between there was something like this. Yeah, like the wall itself sometimes was pushed outwards, the projected outwards. It can be either in the square shape or rectangle shape. We don't really know why that was the scenario. Like, did they store anything there? Was it used for military strategic purposes? Don't know. But for some reason, the walls were constructed like that. Yeah. Okay. What was most significant about this fortification is that it enclosed agricultural tracts. Just like I mentioned, one fortification was actually running around the agricultural lands, right? So again, Abdur Razak and Domingo Pais, they both keep mentioning about how the fortifications were built, between which area and which area were the fortifications there, what was their use, how well were they impressed, blah blah blah. Not important, so I'll just skip those 2 points. And whatever these people are saying, right, like be it Domingo Pais, be it Abdur Razak, be it any other textual source, whatever is written down there, all of those statements are actually true. How did we come to know? Because those statements are corroborated by present day archaeologists. Archaeologists are giving us like live pictures that yes, that is the case. We have examined it, we have taken pictures, they were constructed in whatever way it was mentioned in the textbook, right? So they are true. This tract was serviced by an elaborate canal system drawing water from Tungabhadra. Again, going back to the point where fortification was actually built around the agricultural tract, right? It's surprising. Firstly, because we didn't see something like this before Vijayanagara Empire. Vijayanagara people are actually doing it for the first time. But why? Like, why are they doing so? Why are agricultural tracts being fortified? There is definitely a reason for this, because without a reason, I don't think king would invest so much in building such a huge wall, right? So there is a reason. To understand why is that so, let's just go back to one of the military techniques which was used in the medieval times. So what used to happen back in those times is something called as sieges. The spelling is here, it's S-I-E-G-E-S, right? So what are sieges? Sieges is a sudden war. Okay, to make it clear, we'll just do it in the case of an example, right? Let's say A and B, right? A is Vijayanagara and B is some other external empire. So sieges basically means the B empire wants to wage a war on Vijayanagara people, but it is not telling them before in hand. It is not giving time for Vijayanagara people to prepare for the war. B is suddenly attacking Vijayanagara. What will they do in that case? Obviously, Vijayanagara will lose. So, in order not to lose and protect themselves, this sieges thing actually came up, wherein all of the people, king's family, ordinary people, ministers, soldiers, everybody of the empire used to stay within the fortification limits itself. Right? None of them were seen outside the fortification. All of them were within the empire, within the fortified empire. So what did the enemy kingdom used to do? The B kingdom. They used to like camp there. They used to build their own temporary houses, like camps and stuff. They used to actually stay there for months and months together. Again, what is the use? Why are they wasting their time? The point being, in most of the cases, or like what usually used to happen is people need food to survive, right? They have storage facilities, well done, but how long would the storage facilities provide food? At some point of time, they will be over, right? So in such scenarios, people will starve to death. Then at least people will start coming out of the fortification, and that's when the enemy kingdom will start killing these people. Then that's why they'll wage a normal physical war. So that is what the actual reason for sieges were, because at some point of time storage facility will be over, all the grains will be over, because nobody is going out for so long, right? So where will they get the material from? But what Vijayanagara people did very, very cleverly is these agricultural tracts where the cultivation is basically done, they are also fortified. Now what is the scenario? Even if they run out of storage facilities, they can use the same grains to cultivate in those agricultural tracts. Agricultural tracts are within the fortification limits. So, do you get the idea? Then basically these people don't have to go out for anything. The enemy will be like very exhausted. He'll wait for 2 years, he'll wait for 3 years, he'll wait for 4 years. But how long will he wait? He has to go back at some point of time, no? So that's how Vijayanagara people avoided wars for so many reasons without losing their lives. Yeah. So that's basically sieges. Again, a very conceptual thing, but I'm hoping the point is clear. It's expensive because building fortifications is not an easy thing, but rulers actually thought probably it's worth it than to lose the people's lives. Right? So even though it's expensive, they carried out the same activity. Okay, so that's agricultural tracts fortification. Any questions regarding that conceptual thing, please let me know, guys. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next sub-theme. Okay, then there's a second line of fortification. That was one thing which we talked about. The second line of fortification went around the inner core of the urban complex, which is the urban center. And the third line surrounded the royal center. Like everything had its own fortification. Right? The fort was entered through well-guarded gates. Yeah, like every fortification had certain gates to enter. Those gates were actually very, very special because these are not ordinary gates. They're very huge. Like too huge. And often all of these gates were guarded, like security guards used to be there, because nobody can randomly enter SAE. They need permission to go. Only authorized people can go inside. That's why guards are securing it well. And these gates are also like decorated. So much of architectural style can be seen. Right? They also had like majority of the gates had arcs on them, or like a dome like thing over the gate. Again, like arcs, domes, all these are typical features of the Islamic architecture. Right? Yes, it is true. All these Deccani Sultanate people and Turkish sultans, whoever were living in India at that point of time, they actually, like, arcs and domes are their thing. It's Islamic architecture. But why are Vijayanagara people using it? Because Vijayanagara people felt it was nice and they borrowed that tradition from the Turkish Sultanate people. Right? So what do we see here? An interconnection or like interaction between Vijayanagara people and non-Hindu or like Muslim kingdoms. Right? So that is also important. Yeah, so art historians, like there's a special category of art historians, just like we have normal historians. They basically study about art, just the art and architectural features of it. They actually call this style as Indo-Islamic because they have certain elements of Indianness, they have certain elements of Islamic architecture. So combined together, they were called as Indo-Islamic. Archaeologists have studied roads within the city, right? And those leading out from it, like where is the road leading to? Are there any shops or something just beside the roads? Were there any settlements, or was it an abandoned area? Something like. And they finally came to a conclusion that most of the roads were laid through the normal plain areas like valleys and stuff, and mostly they avoided hills because it's difficult to construct roads on a rocky terrain, right? So archaeologists basically studied so much, and so did historians. That's why we have so much of information available to us right now. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of that subtopic. We still have a couple of minutes. I think I can start the next one, which is urban core. We'll quickly start this. We'll see how much we can cover. So the urban core, right? Moving along the roads into the urban core. So whenever you're following these roads invented by archaeologists, it will lead you to a particular region. So now we are actually going towards urban core, where the majority of the population lived, right? Like ordinary place. There is relatively lesser architectural evidence because honestly speaking, all of those houses which were constructed by the ordinary people, they were not that great. Probably mud or perishable materials were used to construct houses, and with time they will be ruined, they will be damaged. So we don't have house architectural remains as such, but we do come across certain what do you say, these certain tools or certain vessels or something like that whenever you're doing archaeological work. And actually archaeologists came across certain Chinese porcelain in some areas. Again, porcelain is a very, very expensive material, right? Just like we have copper, bronze and all that stuff, porcelain is also an expensive material. It was called as Chinese porcelain because they invented it, and mostly it was used in China itself. Yeah. So including in the northeastern corner of the urban core suggests that there may be these areas may have been occupied by rich traders. Again, the mere fact that you're finding rich materials or expensive materials at a particular place, that means that a rich people used to live there. Yep, probably the family is rich, or might be possible that he was a rich trader or a merchant, and that is why he has a lot of money to purchase Chinese porcelain. Right? We also know that this part of the region was was inhabited by Muslims. Yeah, it was like a Muslim colony. Yeah, why? How do we know that? Because in between the houses we also come across tombs and mosques, right? Again, I don't think where Hindus are residing, their tombs and mosques will be there. No, right? Only where Muslims are there. If it's like a Muslim colony, then you have so many mosques and tombs constructed. That's how historians were able to identify that that was a Muslim residential quarter, right? Yeah, when talking about the architectural styles of these tombs and mosques, it's very interesting to note that tombs and mosques are not Indian origined structures. They have their own Islamic origins, right? Even though they are constructed in Karnataka, in Vijayanagara city, they had some local influence, and that is why we often see that tombs and mosques had some structures resembling mandapas. Mandapas are a Hindu thing. Mandapas is something which is done on a temple. But sometimes tombs and mosques also had them, which means they were locally influenced. Yes. So that's the slide. The next one is again, a Portuguese traveler whose name we've already looked in the previous slides. His name is Barbosa, right? He described the houses of ordinary people which have not survived. Yeah, but he visited in the 16th century. That time the houses were there. So he knows what they looked like and he wrote it down on a piece of paper. But now they are not there anymore. So these other houses of the people are thatched. Thatched matlab basically constructed with perishable materials. They don't remain long, right? Even though the materials are not that good, but they had a decent sense of design and architecture. They were well built. They were arranged properly, right? And they also had like long streets running outside the houses. That's what Barbosa had to say about the houses of ordinary people. And field surveys indicate that the entire area was dotted with numerous shrines and small temples, right? Again, the fact that we are seeing so many temples in a smaller region, it basically says that people were very religious. People wanted to visit so many temples. That is why they built these temples. Yeah, they were religious in the first place. And the survey also indicates that wells, rainwater tanks as well as temple tanks may have served as sources of water to the ordinary town dwellers. Basic point, right? Where did they get water from? The answer being they got water from wells, temple tanks and rainwater tanks. Yes. So that's the end of the slide. Okay, so that's about the urban core. We have basically seen houses of ordinary people and where they lived, where did they get water from, how were their houses. They are not there anymore, but once upon a time when people visited them, that time they noted down the features of it. So that's roughly the urban core. Not much to do with urban core, but now when we'll be talking about the Royal Centre, we'll have a lot to discuss because so much of information is there for Royal Centre, right? So we'll just do like the quick intro for Royal Centre and then we'll stop. Yeah, I know it's 7, but we'll just do a rough intro, right? So the Royal Centre was located in the southwestern part of the settlement, right? Again, just to give you like a brief understanding, let's say this is Vijayanagara city. In the previous slides, we have seen that urban core is towards the northeastern, which is this part, right? Now we are seeing that Royal Centre is towards the southwestern, which is this part, right? So just imagine a rough map in your head and try to indicate which side these places were. It is called as a Royal Centre, of course, because kings lived there it had so many palaces and stuff, but it also included over 60 temples. So temples is like a very common thing we're finding, right? Temples were there in urban core. Now we also see temples in Royal Centre, right? So clearly one could imagine that it's not just the common people, but also kings are interested in worshipping certain gods or building temples. Why? Was it like a strategic move or were they truly believing in God? It can be both, right? In some scenarios, people who are truly religious, like kings are truly religious, they want to like heartfully worship God. That can be one. The second thing is it's for a strategic purpose because once you actually go to a temple, worship the god, tell people about it, then people will be convinced that he's a good ruler because he believes in God. That's some sort of legitimizing your authority by associating yourself with the god or with some sort of divinity, right? So this is like a classic example of any Indian ruler. Consider any Indian ruler, Mauryas, Guptas, anybody. The only thing that they did is trying to associate themselves with some sort of god, any religion let it be. Yeah. what are they doing by doing this? They are trying to legitimize their authority. They are trying to convince people, they are trying to impress their subjects that they are good people. That's the point. Yeah. So temples have been there in the royal center as well. And not just that, we also see 30 building complexes. We're not sure as to what they are, but most of the evidences tell us that these are basically palaces, obviously because of the royal center. And you know how palaces are, they are very, very large structures, and definitely they're not associated with any sort of ritual functions, which means the possibility of it being a temple is cancelled. Yeah, and therefore it has to be a palace, right? But how do we differentiate between palaces and temples if there is no clear evidence? Sometimes it's possible, right? Like there's a particular structure and you're not able to decide whether it's a palace or a temple. In such situations, there is one technique that historians came up with, especially with regards to Vijayanagara Empire. The thing is, temples were actually constructed entirely of masonry, while the normal palaces or any secular buildings like non-religious buildings, they were made up of perishable materials. Perishable is, which means after some point of time they'll be damaged, they'll be ruined, right? They won't exist anymore after a certain point of time. Very weak materials, right? So that's how you differentiate. Don't get confused. Secular is perishable materials. Religious things is entirely of masonry, like good, strong materials. Yeah. So that's the intro for Royal Center. We have Mahanavami, Dibba, and we also have certain. Yeah, we have I think 6-7 slides to cover. Can we do it right now if y'all have energy to listen to another 10 minutes of class? Or can we do it in the next class, guys? It's totally up to you. I have the energy, I can explain. If you have the energy to listen, then probably like we can do it right now. Or probably we can do the Mahanavami Dabba and stop there and not go to the next part. Yeah, probably I'll do the Mahanavami Dabba. But I'll run over it very quickly. Yeah. Okay, so Mahanavami Dabba. We'll look at what Mahanavami Dabba is in the next slide, but let's just focus on what is another important aspect of Royal Center, right? Aditya, yes, I was not feeling well yesterday. I was down with fever, so I couldn't take a class for you guys yesterday. But we can start the chapter from tomorrow, Aditya. Tomorrow for sure I'll take the class. Yeah. Okay, so some of the more distinctive structures in the area have been assigned names based on the form of buildings as well as their functions. Again, what does this mean? Mahanavami Dibba, this is not the name, I'm just telling you the example, right? Or we'll also look at like Lotus Mahal and all that stuff. All these names are not given by Vijayanagara people. No. We don't know what they were called back in those times. But once historians and archaeologists actually started reading about it in the 19th, 20th centuries, they wanted to name it like about something because they wanted to differentiate one structure from from another. And that is when they came across these names, for example, Mahanavami Dibba. These names were assigned based on the form of the buildings as well as what were the functions of the building. Right? So the King's Palace is obviously the largest of the enclosures, but has not yielded definite evidence of being a royal residence. Palace is obviously big because it is grandeur, It's very wealthy, so much of luxuries and stuff, very huge. But we don't really know whether it's just a palace where king used to do his king used to go and do his royal duties. For example, the courts, meeting with ministers, certain other royal professional activities. Was it just that? Or the king and his family also lived in that palace? Was it like a residential thing as well? We don't have evidence for that. Some historians debate the kings also lived there, but some historians say no, his house was like certain kilometers away. He used to like travel to and fro every day. Again, we don't know the exact answer, but it's just a debate which is going on. So this king's palace actually has two impressive platforms, usually called the audience hall and Mahanavami Dibba. Right? What is audience hall? What is Mahanavami Dibba? We'll talk about it in detail now. The entire complex is surrounded by high double walls with a street running between them. Again, they're telling about the importance of fortification, right? And audience, when it comes to audience hall, it's basically a high platform with slots of wooden pillars that close in regular intervals. It's basically a hall, right? It's basically an open hall. And why are we telling it's basically an open hall. And another feature to note down is, let's say this is the hall, right? Like the base of the hall, everywhere wooden pillars are there. It's not just the four pillars towards four corners, but even in the middle of the hall there are wooden pillars everywhere. Some of the historians actually describe that the wooden pillars are so close to each other that I don't think a human can sit in between those two pillars. They are that congested, right? Like one is right here and the other one is right here, right? So there's no way even a human can fit in, right? So that's how the audience hall was constructed, right? It was like a two-storied building. It also had like a second store and also a staircase which people can use to go to the second floor. But we don't really know why was it used, because honestly speaking, people can't sit. It's very suffocating. Then what was it actually used for? Nobody knows. People haven't discovered its usage till now. Right? It's not clear as to what the purpose is. Okay, that's audience hall. We'll quickly move on to talking about Mahanavami Dibba. Again, this is also a massive platform and it's so high, yeah, it's so tall that it has a base of almost 11,000 square feet and a height of 40 feet. 40 feet is roughly somewhere equivalent to 4 floors of a building, like a 4-storied building. So that's tall how the Mahanavami Dibba is, right? There is also evidence that it was supported by wooden structures, because wood was mostly used back in those times to construct various structures. And the base of the platform, right? The platform had all of these relief carvings, like beautiful architecture, right? Beautiful carvings. It can be some sort of stories, animal figures, plant figures, anything. I think the figure is there in your textbook. Please refer back to it. It has these amazing carvings on it, right? Rituals associated with the structure, like what used to happen at Mahanavami Dibba. It is a very important place, and especially when it comes to rituals like Dashera, which is and also called as Mahanavami. Like Navami is the 9th day of Dashera, right? That's how the name was given to this, because the 9th day of the puja of Dashera, which is also called as Navratri or Mahanavami or Durga Puja in different places of the India. So 9th day rituals, all of them were held at this particular place, and that is why it is named as Mahanavami Dibba, to indicate that significance of the 9th day, right? So that is important. It's often also used as a place where kings used to portray their power, prestige, sovereignty at different occasions, right? So it's some sort of symbolic figure, right? Different things used to happen, like at Mahanavami Dibba, for example, worshipping of images like pujas and stuff, worshipping of state horse, sacrifices used to happen, sacrifices of buffaloes, other animals, sometimes humans. So all of these ceremonies actually used to take place at Mahanavami Dibba. Alongside that, entertainment activities also used to happen, like dances, wrestling matches, like parades of animals going in a straight line, for example, horses, elephants, chariots, soldiers, like military people putting up a display, just like we have for August 15th every year, right? So all of these sort of things used to happen at Mahanavami Dibba, and most of the situations, king used to come and attend these things, right? So this place actually had a very deep symbolic meaning. And on the last day of the festival, which is after Navratri, the king actually inspected his armies and armies of the Nayakas as well. That also is like a grand ceremony, right? Inspection in general sense is like a negative connotation. But back in those times, inspection of the armies by the king was looked at as something like a grand ceremony. Yeah. And on all of these special occasions, Nayakas again saw it as an opportunity to showcase their loyalty to the king. They brought the gifts, they paid some sort of tribute, right? So it's an opportunity for Nayakas to be loyal to the king by bringing the gifts. Again, we have a question to ask. Was the Mahanavami Dibba that stands today the center of this elaborate ritual? Again, the parade that we have been talking about, the military display, did this happen at Mahanavami Dibba? We're not sure, because honestly speaking, these militaries are so huge that they had lakhs and lakhs of armies, like thousands of elephants, thousands of horses, in fact lakhs of soldiers, right? I don't think all of them could actually occupy that place at Mahanavami Dibba, because I get it, like Mahanavami Dibba is huge, but it's not that huge to accommodate all of these thousands and thousands of people, right? So we don't know where these processions used to happen of the military people, right? So again, the basic point being, just like any other structure in the royal center, it's not just the palace we have in the royal center, right? We have so many other structures also. Just like them, even this Mahanavami Dibba seems to be a place of mystery, because we don't have complete information about it. We only have like bits and pieces of it. We are still yet to discover something more, right? So that's why it still remains an enigma, I can say. Enigma is mystery, right? Okay, I'll stop there. So yeah, like I think we've done quite a bit of the chapter today. We haven't finished the fourth subtopic though. We still have other buildings in the Royal Center, where we'll be talking about Lotus Mahal. Right. We'll do it in the next class, probably on when is our next class? Monday, right? Yeah, so we'll do it on Monday. But before that, as far as this part is concerned, any questions you all have regarding today's or Wednesday's class, please let me know. I will quickly answer the doubts and then we can wind up the session. It's already been 16 minutes past the time, but yeah. Okay, just type down your questions, guys. In the meanwhile, I'll do the concluding part. So there's something called as Bugs Bounty, which is basically an Unacademy special feature where you learners have the opportunity to report any sort of inappropriate content. You can also be the first one to report and claim a prize for that by using the form in the description below. And yeah, finally, thank you. Thanks so much for attending the class. I'll see you guys next on Monday to talk about the continuation of this chapter. Till then, if you like the content of this video, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy and Scholars in particular. Thanks once again. The class is officially over. In case anybody has to leave, you're free to go. But in case anybody has any questions, please stay back. I'll clarify them and I'll end the session. Yeah. Okay. I don't think any of y'all have questions. I'm assuming everything's clear because when we've done Bhakti Sufi traditions, which is such a difficult chapter, I don't think Vijayanagara is that difficult to understand. Yes. So I'm hoping things are clear. I am hoping things will get clear because I don't think we'll be doing another revision before the exams, like this detailed revision. So in case of like detailed clarifications and stuff, I highly advise y'all to clarify those doubts right now. Yeah. Okay, so that's it. I think we can close the session. Just a reminder that we have a class on Monday where we'll be talking about the remainder of this chapter. I'll see you then. Till then, have a good weekend. Yeah. Stay safe, guys, and take care. Bye.